Hello, my name's Vic Gilgis, and I'm making this tape to talk to you about looking at the fact that you have innate mental health, that your mental health is quite good. It's already there. And it's only our thinking or your thinking, my thinking, can obscure that. Now, as you can tell from my hair, I need a good haircut. We're very near the end of lockdown. Apparently next Monday, everything is going to open a bit more. So that's a good thing. And I think the good thing about this lockdown, certainly for me, has been the fact that being indoors more, I've had a chance to do things like these tapes and learn, as I'm trying my best to do this, to learn how to do this type of thing. And I hope it's helping you. So I want to talk about the three principles, and I'll come to that in a moment, the three principles that provide our mental health. But before I learnt about the three principles, I did have a quest for happiness, and I'm going right back to, well, way back, 25 years. I become very disillusioned with everything, despite the fact that I had a good career, good money, good everything really. There's no need for me to be depressed. But I think everything that I wanted in the outside world had arrived and come to me, and then I realised it wasn't all what I thought it should be. But there you go, that's life. And so I started to look at ways of stopping being depressed. and I went into some therapy, some counselling, which in actual fact didn't help me whatsoever, and that just made me worse because it concentrated, that type of therapy, counselling, concentrated on me examining what went wrong as to why I was feeling the way I did and my past and this, that and t'other, and it just dragged me down. And so I looked elsewhere. I started looking at what happiness was, and very quickly came to understand the power of thought, which can create happiness, but also the power of thought. Our thoughts can create unhappiness. And so at that particular stage, I thought the answer was getting on, kind of, if you imagine thought as being buses arriving. I wanted to get on a good thought bus because the right people would be there and they'd be upbeat and talking to them and whatever, you'd be great and it'd uplift me. But it's looking out for the bad thought buses, with negative things going on, people full of hatred and disgust and moaning and groaning and fed upness. I didn't want to go on those type of buses. But I was still looking really in the wrong direction, because I was looking at sorting things outside of myself. And it wasn't until I came across the work of a guy called Sydney Banks on the three principles that I started to have an idea of, well, it wasn't an idea. I more or less, at the time of discovering what the three principles were, I saw through the charade of my thoughts that thoughts are just energy, and looked at better how we tick, because this was provided by Sydney Banks. And what he was saying was that everything we're looking for is within us, it's right here, and touching that space within us is the ultimate answer. And so that means that really there's less riding on us trying to fix the problem. So whereas before I'd been having, before this epiphany, I suppose, given to me, I was having a mental civil war in my mind. I would have a thought of one way of doing things, and then another part of my mind would say, oh, you know, that there's other ways of doing it. So all this was going on. And I was more and more analysing my thoughts and coming out at the other end, not being kind of satisfied with everything. That I then realised very quickly that the three principles was really helping me. So I'd like to go through those 3 principles. And the first one is mind. Well, it's 3: mind, consciousness, and thought. When I say 3, they are all, well, there's Trinity. They are, you can't have one without the other. They are, you can't boil it down to anything then other than it's like a God realization. That's how we tick. But Sydney Banks kind of split it into 3 things so that I think we could understand it better. So the first thing is mind, not this mind, but mind with a capital M, which is universal intelligence or universal wisdom. And so how could I kind of understand that? It's that the energy that runs through everything. In the animal kingdom, you could see it's why animals have camouflage. So that is just intelligence running through them, kind of their body getting a knowingness of to a leopard having leopard skin so that it blends in. It just happens. It is a kind of intelligence. Grass grows at a particular mathematical rate. Why does the grass know? That intelligence not only runs through animals and vegetation and everything, trees, it runs through us. We look outside for wisdom when that wisdom is already with us. So that is mind. It's the flow of energy, the flow of life. And having said that, we can see that it's beneficial. It wants us to survive. It wants us to live. And in that sense, another word for love. It is there all the time, trying to help us. But unfortunately, we are all, most of the time, looking outside for answers when the answers are already with us. Now, the other thing is that Sydney Banks mentioned was thought. Now, we're not talking about personal thoughts here. We're talking about the ability to think, the system of thought that we have. And it's often described as being like the sky through which our thoughts float, good or bad. And there can be storms in that sky, birds in that sky, lightning in that sky, sunshine in that sky. But the sky is there. In other words, our gift of thought is there to provide us with thoughts. And our thoughts, we have, they can be good, bad or indifferent. We cannot control them. They bubble up and we can look at them and we can get carried away with them if we want. And often, if we're not careful, we get carried away with bad thoughts. It depends upon the amount of importance and gravity that we give to our particular thoughts. So in terms of thought, because everything is energy, then thoughts are not things, and often we in our head get thoughts of this and thoughts of that, and we need to get back to base and realize that they are not real, they are not things, they are thoughts. And the thing that produces our thoughts is the field of thought and our consciousness and mind that runs through us, which is like the Play-Doh of the universe. So at that stage, any thought can be formed, and that is the gift that we've been given to be able to do that. Then we have consciousness, which is our awareness of our thoughts, our awareness that we exist, and that is the 3 things that we have, and that is our link with spirituality. When I say link with spirituality, the thoughts that appear in our head are in the world of form, and what gives rise to those thoughts are the fact that we have mind running through us, in other words, universal intelligence running through us. We have a system of thought to give us thoughts, and we have the ability of being conscious, our consciousness, to see those thoughts. And of course, our consciousness can can be low level of consciousness, and it can rise to a high level of consciousness. And certainly when we're up in our head with lots of thoughts about, shall we do this, shall I do that, she said this and I haven't got this and I need that, then that's kind of a turmoil of thought. And when we go quiet to our thoughts, or the other way around, when our thoughts naturally settle, that is when we better listen to the wisdom that the system that we have of mind consciousness and thought can come through. So that is the link with spirituality, that we have thoughts and that we can see, as it were, when the poo hits the fan, as it often does. Now, when that happens in life, then often, certainly with me, I would say, well, if I haven't got enough money, and that's a worry thought. And so how can I make more money? Or I used to say, that person doesn't like me, and what can I do about that? And so all the time, I was kind of going more into the world of ego and doubling up my efforts in the outside world to sort out what I could do to make things right, to improve my well-being. And what I didn't realise was that that should have been a wake-up call for not doing more what I call in the outside world, but for doing more basically to stop that type of thought and to go within. And going within, I would be given taps on the shoulder. I would be, well, I would, not that I could put it, would be given. That my experience is that it is given, because that's happened to me. That there is something that comes through that does help when your mind is kind of quieter and is connected with what is. And I have examples of in my life where I've been going along and being quite settled and facing issues in my life where my consciousness has tapped me on the shoulder to guide me. And so it does happen, that does come through. It's a miracle, really, and our consciousness is a miracle. And I've witnessed this. I witnessed it many years ago, well, I'm going back to 1970, when my father died. And at the time, there was no reason for my father to pop his clogs, and I was living 100 miles away and didn't know that he was dying, except the fact, my story is, something was wrong with me. All of a sudden, that particular day, I felt terrible. I knew there was something impending that wasn't good. And at that time, precisely, my father was dying, and I found that out later. So there is a connection, there is a transference of something, whatever it is. And then another occasion, and this again is connected with my father. My father had been accused of a crime and in fact had been arrested, and in effect was back at home after 2 days, as it were, on bail. And it was terrible because the family with my father had been tarred with that type of brush, and things looked pretty grim. And it must have been terrible for my father, but all of a sudden, and I was with my father when this happened, he just turned around to me and said, "I'm in the clear." And I said, "What do you mean, Dad?" So he says, "I just know I'm in the clear." And then about 5 minutes later, there was a knock on the door, well, a policeman's knock on the door, and the policeman informed us that my dad was in the clear because the person who had committed the crime had confessed to the crime. Now, how did my father know? So there is something there. I know that. There are lots of examples I could give you, which I've not got time here. So what I'm saying is that when things are going bad, it is a wake-up call to go within, to know that there is something there that does hold us, that does love us, because that's what it gave us our life, and we are love. How can I explain how this might be this in what is inside, and I call that our real self, our true self. How can that be reached? Now, a lot of people say that if we meditate, or I'm not necessarily going to the ins and outs of the process of meditation, but the act of meditation, but meditation itself can give you a quiet mind, and that is where the connection can come through. But another way that I've found is that when I've been enthusiastic about something, in other words, I've been on purpose. You know what I mean? When time flies, you're just enjoying doing what you're doing, and because you love that, you spend more time doing it, you get better at it. And that's inspiration. When you are inspired, in spirit is another word. And that there's the clue. That's when you are connected with spirit, because spirit being love, and mind, consciousness and thought gifts being love, we are linked up to that frequency of love when we are doing something that we love doing. In other words, when we are on purpose, and the universe knows that you're on purpose with your life. Not only will you fare better because your free will is expressing itself in a very good way to help yourself and to help other people, but also it is in direct link with what the universe is doing, is trying to expand and improve and basically enable us to thrive, and that means that it's loving. So that's when we're on purpose. That's when we are connected. In other words, being our true self, not our ego self, which is a false self. And a little quote here by Henry David Thoreau: "If one advances confidently in the direction of his dreams and endeavours to live life which he has imagined, he will meet with success unexpected in common hours." And so I think that's very true, that when you are on purpose and when you are in line with what is loving and your consciousness is like that, then you are in touch with what is, and you are basically working directly with the power of the three principles, which Sid Banks again explained to us. And I haven't talked a lot in detail about three principles, because if you go on YouTube, you'll see Sydney Banks giving it from the horse's mouth in more detail as to what the three principles are. But basically, they are just like God's oneness, love, that can power through us. It is there, and everything we need is there, and that's got our back, and that is very helpful to us, because we can work with that in the way that I've just said. We do our bit, but the other side of the coin, because we are spirit on legs, that's what I mean. We can do our bit, but our spirit, which is formless, and our form here, our human form, is the legs. That is one and the same thing, and we forget. We seem to think that we're just the legs, and that we go out into the world, and because it's a contact sport and we get knocked over and things don't go the way they should, we get downtrodden and get miserable and depressed. That is not the real us. That is not how we are, because basically the spirit is there behind us, and when we look to that and go within, then we just become at one with it, and we become okay. And so I hope that's I will be doing more of these things outside of the lockdown, but I hope the videos that I've done during lockdown have been helpful to you. And thank you very much for listening and for looking in. Thank you very much.